Hey guys, it's Kingdom Orange 2 here, and welcome back to my channel. Since I had such a blast ranking and comparing every Glinda, I thought I would continue on with the even more iconic Wicked Witch of the West. Now, just like my last video, we will first talk about her role in the original novel, compare the various versions to it, and end with my rankings. And like always, if there are any Wicked Witches you strongly feel that I have missed, go ahead and comment them down below. Alright, so now, before a young girl from Kansas melts us with a bucket of water, let's get right into it. The book. In the 1900 children's novel, The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, the wizard tells Dorothy and her friends that in order to grant their wishes, they must go and kill the Wicked Witch of the West. As they head towards her castle, the Wicked Witch is able to spot the travelers lying in the fields with her one eye, which Baum describes is as powerful as a telescope. She sends her flying monkeys to kill them, but since Dorothy has been kissed by the Good Witch of the North, they are unable to harm her, and instead carry Dorothy and the Cowardly Lion to her palace. After a while of being held prisoners, the Wicked Witch realizes that Dorothy is wearing the silver shoes, and wants to use them for their great power. However, since Dorothy only removes them while taking a bath, the Wicked Witch creates an invisible bar of iron that when Dorothy trips over, causes one of the silver shoes to fly off her foot. In a fit of anger, Dorothy takes a nearby bucket of water and throws it onto the witch, causing her to melt. And while it's never explicitly stated why the Wicked Witch of the West died from this, it's implied that she was so old and dried up that the water just melted her away. The Wizard of Oz. Released in 1939, MGM's The Wizard of Oz was the first full-length and with sound adaptation of L. Frank Baum's novel. It's here that the Wicked Witch of the West is changed from an evil side character to the story's main antagonist. She first appears after Dorothy arrives in Munchkinland, angry and upset that someone has killed her sister, the Wicked Witch of the East, and has taken her magical ruby slippers. However, she doesn't harm Dorothy on the spot, and instead continues to harass and intimidate her as Dorothy journeys through Oz. Eventually, though, as Dorothy and her friends head toward the castle, the Wicked Witch of the West sends the flying monkeys to capture Dorothy and bring her to the witch's home. It's there the Wicked Witch of the West learns that she is unable to take the ruby slippers from Dorothy as long as she is alive, and locks Dorothy in a room with an hourglass that counts down how long Dorothy has left to live. Fortunately, though, Dorothy is freed by her friends, but they are cornered by the Wicked Witch of the West and her Winky guards. When the witch lights the scarecrow on fire, Dorothy throws a bucket of water at him, but the water ends up landing on the Wicked Witch of the West, melting her to death. Now, despite being only in the film for 12 minutes, this version of the Wicked Witch of the West is one of the most prominent and popular movie villains of all time. In fact, the characteristic of this witch having green skin is so iconic that it's almost synonymous with the idea of witches, even though this film seems to be the first time in recorded history where a witch was given green skin. Return to Oz. This 1964 television special serves as the first of many unofficial sequels to the 1939 MGM film. The plot centers around Dorothy, who once again finds herself in Oz after a tornado transports her there. While in Munchkinland, Glinda appears to Dorothy and tells her a snowstorm brought the Wicked Witch of the West back to life, who then continued on to steal the gifts Dorothy's friends were given from the Wizard of Oz, such as the Tin Man's heart. As Dorothy travels to reunite with her friends in Oz and seek help from the wizard, the Wicked Witch of the West is able to gain access into the Emerald City by transforming herself into a beautiful young woman. She then ties up the wizard and pretends to be him, telling Dorothy and her friends that they must capture the Wicked Witch of the West in order to receive new gifts. The gang then head to the Wicked Witch's castle, where she is successfully able to steal Dorothy's silver shoes. However, when she places them on her feet, the Wicked Witch turns to stone, which happened because according to Glinda, she was heartless, cowardly, and foolish. All of the terrible things that Dorothy's friends believed they were the whole time, but actually weren't. The Wiz. The Wiz is a 1978 film based on a Broadway play released 4 years prior, which tells the story of the Wizard of Oz but infuses it with elements of African American culture through its use of R&B, jazz, and gospel music. In The Wiz, the Wicked Witch of the West is known as Eveline and is played in both the original production and the movie by Mabel King. Eveline is depicted as an unattractive slumlord who lives in the sewers and forces her people to work non-stop at her sweatshop. She sends her biker gang, the Flying Monkeys, to capture Dorothy and her friends, and as Eveline begins torturing them, the Scarecrow hints at Dorothy to pull the fire alarm, which when Dorothy does causes Eveline to melt away. Now, just like for my Glinda video, despite the Broadway play going through multiple revivals, I'll only be including Mabel King's version of Eveline in my final rankings. However, while I respect Mary J. Blige's performance of Eveline in 2015's The Wiz Live, her overall character is nowhere near as kooky and fascinating as the Eveline from the movie. Toho Animation. In 1982, the Toho Company made the first anime version of The Wizard of Oz. In the film, the Wicked Witch of the West has purple skin, and instead of using her eye as a telescope, she possesses a magical mirror. Similar to the original novel, the Wicked Witch sends multiple groups of animals to attack Dorothy and her friends, but the flying monkeys finally are able to bring them all back to her palace. Though Dorothy's friends are all tied up, she's successfully able to free them, but is cornered at the top of the staircase by the witch. Luckily for her, there just happens to be a giant pot full of water. When Dorothy pours it on the Wicked Witch of the West, she melts away. Well, not really melts, she kind of just shrinks away into nothing, but the same concept, I guess. The Wonderful Wizard of Oz. Initially premiering in 1986, this Japanese series retells the story of the first 3 novels in the Oz universe, as well as the 6th. Similar to the Toho movie released 4 years prior, this Wicked Witch has purple skin, but also has the unique ability to turn people into stone. Now, because this is a TV show instead of a movie, it really stretches out the plot of the book, with the animators adding many new scenes of the witch mistreating the Winkies and constantly begging Dorothy to hand over the shoes. Speaking of stretching out the plot, the show contains the longest melting scene out of any entries in this video, with the Wicked Witch of the West initially being splashed by a bowl of Toto's water before Dorothy takes an entire vat and knocks it onto the witch. Golden Films. If you've seen my channel before, you know how much I love to hate on Golden Films, which was a mockbuster video company that created a ton of knockoff Disney movies in the 1990s. In their version of The Wizard of Oz, released in 1991, the Wicked Witch of the West sees Dorothy through a telescope and has her flying monkeys bring the lion and Dorothy to the palace. As she forces Dorothy to scrub the castle floor, the Wicked Witch hits Toto with her umbrella, and in a fit of anger, Dorothy throws a bucket of water she's using to clean at the Wicked Witch of the West, instantly melting her. Now, since this movie is only 25 minutes, it has almost the exact opposite problem of the Wonderful Wizard of Oz TV series, with all of the action in the movie just being way too fast-paced. In fact, I think the whole Wicked Witch of the West plotline happens in the span of only like 4 minutes. Wicked. Based on the novel Wicked, The Life and Times of the Wicked Witch of the West, Wicked is a Broadway play that debuted in October 2003. Serving as somewhat of a prequel and a companion to the 1939 film, Wicked tells the story of the Wicked Witch of the West, here known as Elphaba, who meets Glinda at Shiz University. Despite initially hating each other, the 2 roommates become best friends and journey to the Emerald City to meet the Wizard of Oz. It's there that they learn that the wizard is really a quack and is the one who has been behind stripping the animals of their rights. While Glinda decides to stay behind, Elphaba flies away with the Grimoire and due to her defiance becomes public enemy number 1, also known as the Wicked Witch of the West. Years later, Elphaba remains secluded while Glinda announces to the public that she is engaged to the Winky Prince Fiyero, but his secret desire is to find and locate Elphaba, the woman he is truly in love with. Eventually though, Elphaba comes out of hiding, and a slew of events set up the plot of the 1939 film, such as Elphaba's sister Nessa Rose becoming the Wicked Witch of the East, Madame Morrible creating the cyclone that sends Dorothy to Oz, and Fiyero being transformed into the Scarecrow. Later on, while Dorothy is locked in the castle, Glinda comes to warn Elphaba of the danger, but Elphaba realizes it's time for her to surrender. The 2 of them share a final embrace, and Glinda watches from afar as Dorothy melts Elphaba with a bucket of water. The play then ends with the audience learning that Elphaba faked her death using a trapdoor, and she and the Scarecrow walk off into the sunset, deciding to leave Oz without telling anyone of their whereabouts. Rather than being a stereotypical villain, Elphaba is portrayed as a misunderstood and sympathetic character, who is constantly bullied and shunned for her green skin. Despite that though, she strongly stands up for what she believes in, protecting the animals and their rights in Oz. Her storyline seems to be one unfortunate event and misunderstanding after another, but the play gives her somewhat of a bittersweet ending. Now, after being stuck in development hell for many years, Wicked was finally made into a 2-part movie, with Cynthia Erivo playing the role of Elphaba. And since I love this story so much, I will be adding her performance to my rankings at the end of the video. The Muppets Wizard of Oz. Released in 2005, The Muppets Wizard of Oz is a modern retelling of the story, with Ashanti in the role of Dorothy Gale, whose main goal is to meet the wizard so she can become a famous singer. In the movie, all 4 witches are played by Miss Piggy, who Tatty Pooh, the Good Witch of the North, claims used to be in a girl group. In order to grant Dorothy and her friends' wishes, the wizard tells them that they must bring him the Wicked Witch of the West's magical eye. And as they head towards her castle, the Wicked Witch sees that Dorothy is wearing her sister's silver shoes. She angrily goes with her motorcycle gang of flying monkeys, who capture and bring Toto, Dorothy, and the Cowardly Lion back to her castle. As Dorothy and her friends are tied up, the Wicked Witch of the West begins filming her reality show, but luckily they are all able to free themselves. Dorothy and the witch fight, ending with Dorothy kicking the witch into a bathtub full of tap water, something that the Wicked Witch is fatally allergic to. The Wicked Witch of the West melts to death and leaves behind her magic eye for Dorothy to now take to the wizard. Tin Man. Aired in 2007, this sci-fi miniseries begins with Azcadelia, the ruler of Oz and this version's Wicked Witch of the West, sending her Batwing Mombats to Kansas to kill DG, played by Katy Perry. Luckily though, DG is able to escape through a cyclone and finds herself in the OC, also known as the Outer Zone. As DG ventures deeper into the OZ, she begins regaining her magical powers as well as her memories, and we finally learn more about DG's true identity and past. It turns out that many years ago, DG and Azcadelia were young princesses of the OZ, but one day DG accidentally let her sister's body become taken over by an ancient Wicked Witch. Now fully possessed, Azcadelia killed her sister, but their mother, the Queen, is able to revive DG by using light magic and sends her to Kansas for safety. DG also regains the memory of the emerald, which Azcadelia wants to find and use during the upcoming total eclipse, planning to plunge the OZ into eternal darkness. DG is eventually able to locate the emerald, but it is taken by Azcadelia, who traps DG into a sarcophagus and begins using the emerald as the sun and the moon lock into place. Luckily though, DG is able to use her powers to escape and successfully convince Azcadelia to hold her hand, freeing Azcadelia from the Wicked Witch's possession. In the end, the Wicked Witch is finally destroyed for good, and Azcadelia and DG reunite with their parents, who once again become the king and queen of the OZ. Oz the Great and Powerful. A quote-unquote spiritual prequel to the 1939 film, 2013 Disney's Oz the Great and Powerful tells the story of how Oscar Diggs, a con man from Kansas, became known as the Wizard of Oz. In the movie, when Oscar lands in Oz with his hot air balloon, he is greeted by Theodora, a good witch, who tells Oscar that he must be the great wizard that the former king foretold would come. Oscar enchants Theodora, leading her on to believe that she is special to him, and then one day she will become his queen. Theodora takes Oscar to meet her sister Evanora in the Emerald City, who sends Oscar off to defeat Glinda, who she claims is a wicked witch. The next day, as Theodora looks for Oscar in the palace, she sees him with Glinda through Evanora's crystal ball. It's here that Evanora tricks her sister into thinking that Oscar also tried to woo her, which upsets Theodora, but Evanora offers to give her a way to remove her heartache. She gives her younger sister an enchanted poison apple that when Theodora takes a bite of, gives her green skin and causes all of the goodness inside of her to die, transforming Theodora into a wicked witch. Later on, the sisters prepare their armies to attack, but their flying monkeys all fall asleep in a field of poppies. They are able to capture Glinda though, but Oscar and his crew, through the use of a projector, trick the evil sisters into fleeing the city. As she rides away, Oscar tells Theodora that he knows her wickedness is not her doing, and if she can ever find good in her heart again, is able to come back. But Theodora refuses and vows to take revenge, ending the film by flying off on her broom towards the west. Once Upon a Time. The third season of the show introduces us to Zelena, also known as the Wicked Witch of the West. Zelena has probably one of the most in-depth and complicated storylines of any Wicked Witch on this list. As a baby, she was abandoned by her mother Cora and magically transported to Oz, where she was raised by a family who thought her magical powers made her wicked. Later on, a string of unfortunate events somewhat created this self-fulfilling prophecy, such as the Wizard of Oz secretly being a con artist, finding out that Regina, her half-sister, was chosen to enact the Dark Curse by Rumpelstiltskin, Linda lying to her about the prophecy in the Book of Records, and Dorothy trying to kill her with a bucket of water. All of this further pushes Zelena into becoming wicked and increases her motive on wanting to create a time-traveling spell, which she hopes to use to live the comfortable and privileged life that she believes was stolen from her. Later on, Zelena successfully successfully does create the time-traveling spell, but is unable to use it, as Rumpelstiltskin turns her into stone and shatters her to death with a dagger. Now, Zelena does resurrect herself later in the series, but the last important thing I want to touch on in this video is that Zelena's green skin is caused by her emotions of jealousy and envy manifesting themselves onto her skin. Emerald City. A mature take on the Wizard of Oz novel, NBC's Emerald City was released in early 2017, but cancelled only after one season. In the show, the Wicked Witch of the West, known simply as West, is a cardinal witch, or one of the 3 most powerful witches in Oz. We later learn a couple more things about witches in this TV show. The first is that they all descend from Mother South, a witch who seemingly disappeared 20 years ago after fighting the Beast forever, and that after this battle, the wizard also outlawed magic itself. Nowadays, West is the madam of a adult entertainment club and loves to spend time enjoying the hallucinogenic effects of smoking poppies. Unlike her sister Glinda, West was happy to give up magic, feeling helpless after the Beast forever took the lives of many of her sister witches. However, West eventually meets a young boy named Tip who she believes is very special, and convinces Tip to train in the art of witchcraft with her. After going down to the witch's crypt and extracting the spells of East, we find out that Tip is actually Princess Ozma, the former princess whose family ruled before being killed by the wizard. The girls then resurrect many witches from the prison of the abject who join Ozma in taking back the Emerald City. And with the wizard now killed, Ozma is crowned the new Queen of Oz. Okay, so the last entry we're going to take a look at in this video is Lost in Oz. An Amazon Prime exclusive, Lost in Oz follows Dorothy Gale, the great-granddaughter of the original Dorothy, who finds herself transported to Oz via a magical cyclone. Upon arrival, Dorothy meets West, a witch who is also the great-granddaughter of the original Wicked Witch of the West. Although initially somewhat frenemies, West accompanies Dorothy in her various journeys in trying to find a way back to Kansas. Early on, we learn that one of West's greatest desires is to become a stronger witch, but her mother Sira refuses to teach her, believing that magic is dangerous. Luckily for West, though, she meets and befriends her lost aunt Langwidere, who tricks West into handing over the Pearl of Pingaree. With the pearl in hand, Langwidere uses it to take over Oz, causing everyone to forget about Glinda and giving West a high position of power. However, even though West is pleased with her new position and stronger magic, she realizes that deep down what her aunt is doing isn't right, and uses her powers to help Dorothy and Glinda trap Langwidere inside of a painting forever. Later on, Glinda agrees, much to Sira's disapproval, to teach West in helping her sustain her magic. And the two of them work together to not only save Sira, but also in saving the Emerald City from the Gnome King. So now it's time to do the rankings, and I just want to say this ranking was like 100 times harder than Glinda's because a lot of these Wicked Witches are just really, really good. So, number 14 is Golden Films. So simply just because this was the Wicked Witch of the West with the shortest amount of screen time, she's going to the bottom of this list. However, I will say that her voice acting and overall design were pretty decent. Number 13 is Tin Man. There are just way too many things that bother me, not just about Ascadelia, but also about the show itself. For starters, I didn't really care about the reveal that Ascadelia and DG were sisters, and I didn't think her acting or overall design were that interesting. I think the writers were going for more of a sexy witch look with their version of the Wicked Witch of the West, but I don't feel like it worked that well here. Also, I absolutely hate those tattoos that Ascadelia uses to summon the flying monkeys. They look like a trashy, bad tramp stamp to me. I don't know. I would have honestly preferred to have seen more of the actual Wicked Witch in the show as the main villain instead. Number 12 is Return to Oz. I really don't have anything negative to say about this Wicked Witch of the West personality or storyline, and I actually really like how she's the only witch on this list who manages to get the silver shoes on her feet, even though they turn her to stone. However, since character design is so important to me, and Rankin Bass usually has a very consistent but sometimes boring animation style, the version of the Wicked Witch of the West doesn't really stand out. Other than the fact that the Wicked Witch of the West is voiced by a man, but so is every other old lady in a Rankin Bass animated show or special. Number 11 is Toho Animation. While I do appreciate that the animators for this movie's Wicked Witch of the West gave her a design that was in the same vein as the books, she just isn't necessarily as memorable or as interesting as many other Wicked Witches on this list. One thing that bothers me about Toho's Wicked Witch of the West is that she's just way too similar to the Wicked Witch from the anime series. So much so that I often get them confused for one another, which just further proves my point about how forgettable she is, especially in a list where 5 Wicked Witches of the West are literally green. However, I do give her some props for being scary, and I love how she chased Dorothy around the castle. And honestly, her melting scene is probably the funniest out of all of them, because she doesn't melt, she just kinda shrinks to death. Number 10 is Lost in Oz. I don't think that overall West is a bad character. In fact, I quite enjoyed her storyline, especially her internal struggle with wanting to do the right thing but also having her dreams come true. The problem with me though is I feel like I've seen this trope done 100 times before in kids media, and also done a bit better. Raven Queen. Also, the magic in this show wasn't that interesting to me. It was just too sci-fi for my liking. But props to the writers for giving her green skin when she gets greedy. That was a cute touch. Number 9 is Emerald City. Just like the other West on this list, Emerald City's version of the Wicked Witch of the West has great moments, and I felt like her somewhat anti-hero persona fit in much better with the show's overall plot. However, West was just a bit too emo and hedonistic for me. She spent most of her time either not caring about anything, having an emotional breakdown, or getting angry. Also, the actress who plays West looks way too much like a goth 2007 Katy Perry. I don't know, for some reason her haircut made it hard for me to take her seriously at times. Number 8 is The Wonderful Wizard of Oz. Typically, anime characters never really have a huge impression on me, but I found this Wicked Witch to be pretty terrifying. I love that the writers gave her the ability to not only set things on fire, but also turn people to stone. It added to this anxiety you felt about Dorothy and her friends being in trouble. I will say though, I wasn't crazy about the extended storyline. I felt like they took the plot of the book and just stretched it out way too much. I also think that this Wicked Witch of the West design could have been a bit more interesting. She honestly looks like a purple version of the witch from Snow White. Number 7 is The Muppets Wizard of Oz. So I joked about Miss Piggy's performance in my last ranking, and even though nobody thought it was funny, if I'm actually being honest this time, this was probably my favorite witch played by Miss Piggy. Even though she's a Muppet, Miss Piggy is a pretty intimidating character, and this version of the Wicked Witch of the West just played into her personality really well. I absolutely love her biker look, and despite being crappy 2005 CGI, the scene where the movie zooms into the witch watching Dorothy walk towards her castle still kind of creeps me out. I actually loved that all 4 witches were sisters and played by Miss Piggy, but I'll never understand why the good witches just don't care after Dorothy straight up murders 2 of their sisters. I don't know, maybe the band breakup was a lot worse than Tatty Poo led us to believe. Number 6 is Oz the Great and Powerful. Okay, so here's the thing. We all know that this isn't Mila Kunis's best performance, and while I've sat and thought of 100 different reasons as to why this is, I would argue that overall this character has more positive attributes than negative ones. For starters, the story on how Theodora becomes the Wicked Witch of the West is interesting, even though I do think her switch from good to evil was a bit too fast-paced. Also, Theodora's design is outright phenomenal. The mix of prosthetics and those whack eyebrows make Theodora look borderline terrifying. I would even argue that she's scarier than the Wicked Witch of the West in solely appearance, but the contrast of going from an innocent girl like Theodora into a scary green woman works very well for this story. Number 5 is The Wiz. My only problem with Eveline is that we don't see enough of her in The Wiz, because overall she's a fantastic character. Eveline's design is so unique and iconic. She also is downright terrifying, with honestly the scariest thing about her being the fact that she uses an oversized bejeweled toilet as a throne. I'm just so happy that Mabel King got to reprise her role from Broadway, and her song Don't Nobody Bring Me No Bad News is one of my favorites from The Wiz. Number 4 is Once Upon a Time. Even though the show is so ridiculously confusing to understand at times, I adore Zelena as a character. Usually I would argue against having the Wicked Witch of the West be a sexy witch type, but Rebecca Mader manages to pull it off well, and I really like the wide variety of powers and spells Zelena is given over the course of the show. Now, the only thing that really bothers me about Zelena are her makeup and outfit choices. A lot of the dresses they put her in look a bit cheapish, and I don't even know where to begin about how bad her green skin is. It looks like she was dumped in a vat of green paint. Number 3 is Wicked the Movie. Words cannot simply describe how perfectly wonderful and fascinating Elphaba is. Both the author of the Wicked book and the screenwriter of the Broadway play were able to take such an iconic but somewhat mysterious character and give her a fascinating backstory. Elphaba really has it all: the personality, the magic, the great wardrobe changes, and of course, the best of all, her amazing singing voice. Now, the only complaint I ever had about Elphaba was I don't really like how, at least in the Broadway play, she's never truly wicked. It's just more of a propaganda machine created by Madame Morrible. However, the second Wicked film has yet to come out, and maybe we'll see more of Elphaba's wickedness in that movie. So specifically with Cynthia Erivo, I will say at first I was a bit hesitant because I didn't know any of her previous work, but she completely blew my expectations out of the water and then some. I really enjoyed Cynthia's take on Elphaba's personality. She did such a good job portraying Elphaba's awkwardness but brazen nature. Cynthia also has such a wonderful singing voice, and I enjoyed a lot of the new wardrobe pieces that were created for this film. Number 2 is Wicked the play. When two actresses give such wonderful performances for an already great character, it's really hard to rank one over another. Both Cynthia and Adina have their own individual strengths and weaknesses, but when it comes down to it, I decided to go with Adina for one particular reason. Because Adina helped shape the character of Elphaba into what it is in the workshops of 2002, I placed her higher. Now, I can't 100% say to what influence Adina had on the character of Elphaba. That we will probably never know. However, since I've grown up with listening to her sing on the soundtrack for so long, I won't argue that I don't have some sort of nostalgia bias. Number 1 is The Wizard of Oz. Like I've mentioned earlier in this video, MGM's version of the Wicked Witch of the West is one of the most iconic movie villains of all time. She's so iconic that almost every media company will just ignore the original drawings of the witch in L. Frank Baum's book and copy both Margaret Hamilton's appearance and mannerisms for their Wicked Witch of the West. Regardless though, this Wicked Witch has managed to terrify millions of Americans through her fire powers, her harsh cackle, and her army of winkies and monkeys. Also, the witch's green skin makes her not only unique, but very memorable. I don't know why they decided to do this, but it was such a great idea. Overall, we can all agree that Margaret Hamilton should have won an Academy Award for this performance, but maybe the Academy just doesn't appreciate camp. If you liked this video today and want to see more content in the future, make sure you hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Thank you guys so much for watching today, and I will see you soon. Bye!